AITA for no longer making toys and furniture for my former sister-in-law after her new husband called them an embarrassment, and me cheap for not paying for stuff. My brother died before his firstborn child was born. Because of this, I've had an above-average involvement in my nephew's life. One thing I've always done is build him toys and furniture. It was a way of providing without the awkwardness of handing over cash. Also, between my late brother's cash and life insurance via work, a trust was set up for my nephew for £500,000. He wasn't actually married to my sil. Now via the lab at work I've made him a lot of wooden or 3D printed toys, but also some simple handmade electronic toys. My sister-in-law was always grateful for these, and my nephew, by all accounts, loves his custom toys. Fast forward 3 years and my former sister-in-law has gotten married. I was attending my nephew's 3rd birthday and I turned up the night before to assemble his present. It was a small climbing frame swing set I had watched better carpenters than me in the lab make. The new husband was a little standoffish, but come the day of the party he was telling anyone who listened that I didn't pay or make the present. I had lackeys at work do it for free. This culminated in him calling all my presents an embarrassment, and given my fancy job I could afford to splash some cash. I confronted him and my former sil, and she basically confirmed that whilst the presents were appreciated, she honestly expected more direct support from me after my brother's death. My mother stepped in and reminded her my brother paid for this house and they regularly take cash out of the trust, approximately £10,000 a year. We walked out without hearing any worthwhile response, but I continued to see my nephew without incident. 6 to 7 months go by and I'm visiting only to be told my former sil was pregnant with twins, and she was wondering if I could make some duplicates of items I made for my nephew as they needed 2 sets. I scoffed. Said she had balls asking me to make stuff after she was so ungrateful and I owe her unborn children very little. She got upset and explained her prior statements about my handmade gifts and said she felt they were the kinda little things someone did as a favor. Not what a family provides. That's why she's asking me now as a friend to do her a favor and manufacture duplicates. I said no, again, and her husband shouted through that it didn't matter, they would just use the trust to provide for kids like it's supposed to. I retorted that it was for my nephew and good luck accessing it for that because the trust requires my signature to pay out. I wasn't even home before he was calling me to apologize, clearly unaware I held the reins to my late brother's money. The apology was insincere and I asked to speak to my former sil, where I confirmed again I wouldn't be manufacturing her anything. I'll still be an uncle to my nephew and be impartial when it comes to her accessing my nephew's trust, but her husband has burned a lot my goodwill with this. AITA for not doing her a favor after all that. Update. AITA for no longer making toys and furniture for my former sister-in-law after her new husband called them an embarrassment, and me cheap for not paying for stuff. So, I've had a few requests for an update. So here goes. As highlighted in the comments of my last post, the main issue wasn't whether I manufactured anything for my former sil, it was the money my brother left his son. So whilst I felt it was an overreaction to their behavior to withhold gifts, I came to the conclusion I was underreacting to her husband's comments regarding my nephew's money. So I contacted the solicitor involved and pushed more responsibility onto them for signing off on money being withdrawn from the trust. She is required to enforce the trust's documentation fully, and this has meant no more withdrawing money without explicit proof it was for my nephew's benefit. To my former sil's credit, she understood why I did this. She was sensible enough to see these boundaries were not my doing but the insurance company's, and nothing has changed in regards to our relationship and the time I spend with my nephew. Unfortunately, her husband took things badly and hasn't spoken to me since. On top of this, for the following months he became incredibly petty regarding money. He would track to the last penny everything my nephew ate, drank or played with. He was doing things like putting restaurant orders through with my nephew's food on a separate receipt, or keeping track of prescription charges just so he could be in a position to claim the maximum value from the trust. The stress of raising their twins seems to have stifled this. Despite all the tracking, I've not been asked to sign off on anything thus far, but those receipts could still be claimed for. It's unfortunate, but I can't protect this money from legitimate, if petty, claims. I also fully expect the house bought with my brother's money would go to the husband were my sil to die, given their children together. She owns it outright with no strings attached. I've kept a close eye on how my nephew is being treated, and by all accounts this hasn't trickled down to how my sil, her husband, treat him at all. This seems to have been kept as a disagreement between adults regarding money, and my mother, who regularly babysits, claims her husband appears to be continuing to treat my nephew like his own. Despite that, our faith in my nephew's money being the safety net it was always intended to be has been shaken, so my recently departed grandmother got the ball rolling on starting a second, much more ironclad, pool of money for my nephew. It's nothing overly elaborate, just money my late brother would have been entitled to, skipping straight to my nephew. Ideally this won't have to be relied upon, but between what my grandmother set aside and our mother's intended will, my nephew will have enough for a head start in life regardless of what happens to his existing money. It isn't a perfect solution, but when it comes to inheritance and family money there rarely is. Oh, and in what's kinda become a side issue, I made the furniture in the end.